Well, thank you all for coming tonight. Welcome, welcome. My name is Nicole, and I head up community over at Trusted Health. And tonight we are thrilled to bring to you Blueprint to Bedside, a nurse inventor's guide to innovation. And if you're not familiar with Trusted, we are the place for the modern nurse. We place nurses in travel positions all across the country. And we also host an amazing array of resources like events like tonight's. We also have a podcast, we have a blog. We really do want to be the place for the modern nurse, which is many of you, I'm sure. You can go forward, Joey. For the agenda tonight, we are going to talk a couple things. We're going to do some greetings and intros, why nurse invention matters, the patent process, funding your project, and obviously making money, staying motivated, and then if we have time, we'll do the pitch. Otherwise, we're going to switch over to a little bit more Q&A at the end to make sure that all of your questions get asked. And speaking of questions, this is Bevy platform for us. So if you go ahead and look at the top right of your screen or phone, wherever you're zooming us in, not literally Zoom, but just looking at us and watching us tonight, there is a chat function. There's two or actually three different pieces. There's general, or you can say hi, any like general questions you have. There is a Q&A function. So if you have a question, this is where you want to put it. And our trusted team will float that up to Joey and Brian. You can also upvote questions here. So if you have a question that you know is really important and you see the same questions already been asked, go ahead and click the like button, the little thumbs up to upvote that question so that one can get asked sooner than later. If you have any other questions about the actual technical aspects of Bevy, you don't know how something works, you want to DM somebody, you can by all means use the general tab, or you can DM me and Nicole Warshower, and we're really happy to help. So with that, I will float away and let Joey and Brian do their thing.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Brian Mohika. Thank you for Trusted Health having us on, and also to Joey for joining me on this journey to help nurses come up with their own medical devices and bring them to market. My name is Brian Mohika, and I've been a nurse for 6 years. I have also my degree in radiology. I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, and I currently own 7 U.S. patents, 7 medical patents, 6 U.S. and 1 European. And I recently wrote a book for nurses on my journey. It's called Let It Flow. And we wanted to continue on, and I'll introduce Joey to you. And you might hear that we kind of pressing through the slides a little bit. That's intentional. We want to really get to the Q&A and give everyone a chance to partner up with this pitch.
Yeah, again, to echo Brian, thank you so much, Trusted. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're so excited, Brian and I. I'm Joey Ferry, co-founder of Frontier Health and Resources. I've been a nurse for over 13 years now, most of it spent at the bedside, recently transitioned to an administrative supervisor role. And I also part-time am a clinical nursing instructor as well. So I co-invented with the other gentleman in this photo, Tofiki Gafar Shaner. He's my business partner and good friend. We're the founders of Frontier Health, but also co-invented SafeSeizure pads, which patented completely as well. And that was the reason behind us winning the 2020 ANA Innovation Award. And so we're super honored to win that. We also won 2-time Nightingale Award winners as well. And then I just consider myself a serial entrepreneur. The funny thing is I've always thought of myself as that way. I mean, back to elementary school, whether it was selling candy or making my own lottery system, that got shut down very quickly. But for as long as I can remember, this was my life. This was what I thought I was going to do until nursing presented itself in my life as a much more secure route for me. And so even well into my nursing career, I always kept these two things separate, entrepreneurship and nursing. And it wasn't until I met Tofiki when he had set out on his own entrepreneurial journey with SafeSeizure, was I like, wait a second, why have I kept these two separate my whole life when in fact there's a perfect place for it in our profession and in our industry? And so why does nurse invention matter so much right now more than ever? It's because nurses, we are the end user, right? We're the ones that connect the tubes. We're the ones that button the gown. We're the ones that work the machines. And oftentimes we're not the ones in the development room or building out the prototypes. We unfortunately are the end user. We were never asked what we thought in the very early stages of products or designs. And so that is why it matters, is because we know at the end of the day, it's us and our patients. So, and what do we do when certain products don't work? Nurses figure out ways around things, right? We tape things to a bed rail, or like this photo. This is a workaround. We're all very familiar with workarounds in our industry. This photo is beautiful. Brian and I, you guys have all probably seen it going around on LinkedIn. It's an ICU patient whose tubing was resting on their chest and kept irritating the patient. So the nurse blew up a glove, put it on the chest, and now it's kind of managing those lines. It's a prime example of a workaround. And I often say workarounds are just solutions that haven't been invented yet. And so on LinkedIn and all these other social media sites, you're hearing a lot about nurse entrepreneurship. Is it a fad? Is it a real thing? Brian, what's your take on nurse entrepreneurship, and where are we headed in our industry?
Well, it's not necessarily a fad. It's just the way of the future. It's the way that things are going. Starting last year was the year of the nurse, and I would never disparage another profession, but the doctors are doing doctor things. They're inventing for what they're doing. But nurses, we have this intimate relationship with patients, right? Where we're seeing things that other people aren't seeing, like the lab techs come in, the x-ray techs come in and things like that. But nobody has that close contact with patients. So it is a real thing. And we're obligated to push forward. It's not necessarily, are you going to fail? Are you going to be successful? Are you going to make millions of dollars or whatnot? But we're obligated to bring these innovations and these medical devices to market. Joey, I love that phrase, the workaround, because that's essentially what it is. And I believe every nurse to some capacity has developed a workaround, and that's the invention. And remember, if as you start to invent your own devices, it's going to solve a problem, and every nurse will be able to bring that innovation and solve one of the patient's plights, and all of us collectively can seriously impact healthcare. And the best way to look at it is to remember that it's not about us. It's never about us. It's about the patient. It's not about, what are we going to do, or how are we going to bring something to market? If we keep the focus of the patient at the forefront, that's the greatest motivation that can ever come to a nurse. Like for me, I saw the problem with the leg bags. I invented CathWear. It's a medical underwear designed for patients that require the use of leg bags. Patients that wear a leg bag, the bag slides up and down the leg. The plastic to skin creates sweat points, the over tightening of the straps. It can add to a multitude of other complications for the patients, rashes and whatnot. So I saw this as a problem, patient after patient. I was working in the interventional radiology suite. I was helping the doctors place the drains, and I knew that there was something better. I could just hear the patients always complaining, and can't wear shorts, can't wear a skirt, can't wear a dress. So what I did was, as I identified the problem, I went through InventHelp. I just so happened to see a commercial for InventHelp. You know how those things just happen to fly by you. And I said, let me look them up. They ended up doing the whole patent process, patent research process for us. And so there were some things that I necessarily didn't do that Joey did. And it's going to be very interesting how you hear the way that I did it, the way that Joey did it. And what that establishes is that there's no right way to do it. There's no set way to do it. The only way to do it is to go forward and continue to put one foot in front of the other, right? Like if there's a 1,000-step journey, we've all heard the quote, it starts with one step. And that's something that a lot of people don't do. They stop at the next step. And you can't really worry about the 1,000th step. It's only that next one. And that first one is the patent process, the patent research process. Joey, go ahead.
Yeah, what's funny about that, Brian, so I was reading some of the questions, the pre-survey questions that we got, and I'm seeing a lot of, how do I get started? What do I do first? That is, for me, and I'm sure for you too, that's always the number one question we get asked. And to Brian's point, you just have to take the next step. Don't think about, of course, it's great to think about what this could be, how wonderful it could be, but once you've identified you want to move forward, just go from A to B. Don't think about Z, X, Y, and Z, because if you do, you're going to get bogged down and you're likely going to get discouraged. Just think about B. And for us here, B might simply be researching patents. Like Brian said, he went through InventHelp, right? And that seemed to work out, you know. But for like me and my partner, we got on Google. Google has their own patent database. The United States Patent Office has their own database. So we started researching for free these databases just to see, are we onto something? Then once we realized, hey, wait a second, we're not seeing anything in these patents that represents what we're doing. Now maybe you push forward and go seek out patent attorney and professional help, because eventually you're going to need that anyways. But there's a lot of things you can do for free to just go from A to B. And that in itself may give you enough momentum and motivation to push forward, right, Brian?
Yeah, I agree. And then the next step, this is my favorite step. I believe that once you've done the patent research process, this is my favorite step, because this is when it comes to life. This is when the creative juices really start to flow. All of your clinical experience comes in. I mean, the clinical experience that nurses have, even just through nursing school, you know, we just learn so much about so many things, and then you start to work in the specified area. So for me, I like to draw. I have a really good penmanship. I was in the military, so I have a high attention to detail. That's just what they drill into you. And for me, I drew this picture and then I sent it to the patent attorney, and then they send it back. It's like a tennis match over a couple of weeks. You know, they did the computer automated design. And then as they send it back, this is why this stage right here is so critical, because you have to explain it to the patent attorney. When you explain, you always learn it more. When you have to speak it, you always learn it more. And when you have to write it, those are the 3 ways to improve memory in anything in life. That's just the natural mechanisms of the brain. And here I'm like drawing lines, I'm drawing, diagrams and all this stuff. And no, this goes here and this goes there. But you also start to change things, because you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Or, well, this doesn't sound clinically sound. And you start to make your adjustments. And listen, I think I'm on my 5th version of CathWear. If you see the red arrow that's going to the right, that's our pediatric version. That's a knockoff. What I did was I looked at our patent, and I thought of every way that somebody could knock off my idea. So I knocked off my idea and I created a patent for it, and also a pediatric. Sound a little confusing, but I wanted to take my idea and let it evolve into a multitude of different aspects. And this is what it looks like here. This is CathWear. If you look at the X-looking feature there, that is to keep the tubing concealed and close to the body, similar to like a drawstring and a pair of sweatpants. Why? Because every time I used to get called into the operating room, a patient would inadvertently pull on the tubing, get caught on the door handle. So I wanted to keep it close and concealed for patient privacy. I designed it so that it encompassed all drains, so that I could keep the cost relatively low. We got it covered through, can write a script for it. And I didn't want somebody to come behind me if I didn't add all the drains and then add all of the drains. So that's where it's critical, being a nurse, because we see things and we know things in a more profound way.
So then yeah, similar to me. So just how Brian had identified that problem in the lines department as far as drains and whatnot, and coming up with an amazing solution in CathWear. Myself and Tofiki, like I had mentioned, we had set out on a different problem. We were bedside nurses, and every time we had a patient placed on seizure precautions, this is what we'd walk into. I'd get report, great, patients on seizure precautions, yeah, their bed rails are padded. Are they padded, or are they padded wrapped with blankets? And we thought maybe it was just our hospital. But then we started researching and finding out that hospitals in New York, Wyoming, Canada, it didn't matter where, we were doing the same thing. Partly because nurses, again, are so creative and we figure out workarounds, but also because this solution has been around for over 30 years. If you talk to nurses that are maybe now in director level, they remember their med-surg days. They're like, oh yeah, I remember I used to pad the bed rails with blankets. And so we saw this as a huge problem. And for us, it was figuring out, well, we know that there's other products on the market, right? We know we've used the big pads or the fancy manufacturer laser cut ones that fit the bed rails perfectly. Why aren't we using those? We even had them in my hospital. So what we identified as nurses is there's so many barriers from a logistical standpoint. Where are they being stored? Are they dirty? Are they clean? The unit only has one per unit because they're so expensive. So nurses naturally just kept going back to blankets. And over time, we're just used to it. It's quicker. Grab it off the linen cart, grab a roll of tape or stretchy underwear, boom, it's done, right?
Crazy.
Yeah, we were not satisfied with that. So we go to the research section. And just how Brian had talked about on his research, of course, we started researching patents and whatnot, but we also started reaching out and finding other solutions and other people. What are other people doing to move forward with an idea or an invention? And what we found, unfortunately, at the time, this was 3 years ago or so now, there was nothing for nurses, nothing. I mean, every book that was written, and I have some even on my bookshelf here. This is From Patent to Profit, Excellence in Business. So everything is designed around the general public, but nothing was written for us as medical professionals and frontline staff. And so, of course, I'm going to put this book here in the slide because I put it on all the other talks I do with Tofiki and I, because what Brian did, in my opinion, was the first to take a nurse's perspective and apply it to the journey of inventing a product. And so, he just happens to be on this particular conference, but this is one of the few resources that we found that does it justice. And the point here is to just research any book you can, find other people that are doing it. Again, network with other folks, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel, for lack of better terms, because people already have done certain things. You're going to hit roadblocks. Let Brian tell you all about it in, I don't know, chapter 5, and there you go. Now, when you hit the roadblock, you're like, oh yeah, I remember. Let me sidestep over here and do it this way. So make sure you do some research and utilize various people, networks, and other books and things like that to kind of get you through. Again, just like Brian said, my favorite part is prototyping as well. I love the tinkering aspect of like starting from nothing and then creating something.
I know, it's fun, right?
It's the best.
Love it.
It absolutely is the best. Now, whereas Brian's image, I'm a little bit envious of it, is his red lines and ink. It just looks amazing. My brain works totally different. I grew up on Photoshop. I grew up on my computer with digital art. I love graphic design. And so my brain just works that way. Completely different than Brian's, but it gets the job done. So what I do when I have an idea, I sit at my computer and I start just pulling images from all over Google, different websites, and I start layering them on top of each other and making diagrams digitally. And then eventually getting to a full product, which is now SafeSeizure. So you can see how we went from that prototype phase. I mean, it was a while of sourcing out different materials. We needed something cleanable, wipeable, liquid resistant. We knew we wanted it universal to fit on every single bedside. So that's why we put these adjustable straps. We knew we made them inflatable because one of the things we identified with the big bulky pads is that they're hard to store. We found hospitals where managers were literally keeping them on their desk. One, because they're so expensive, but two, because they didn't have a closet to fit them in. These come in a size this big, and being that they're inflatable allows them to be shipped and stored super small. But then once they inflate, they get big and protect the bed rail with air and foam. And so that it was just a process. It's not like we just woke up and said, boom, they have to be this, this, and this. By process of elimination and this and that, you ultimately get to a final product.
Yeah, a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error, but right, Brian, that's the funnest part.
I think it is too.
Yeah, I remember when we first got this product. Sorry, I don't mean to go on a tangent, but we bought a pad off Amazon, like a camping pad, okay? Then we took some backpack straps, cut the straps off a backpack and took them to a seamstress or a dry cleaning place and had them sew it on. And then we were tying it to our furniture in our kitchen. And we're like, wait, I think this could work. Like, that's the fun part. And so definitely enjoy that part. But yeah, that's kind of Brian and I's stories and kind of how we prototyped and moved along. I think it would be a great time for some questions, Brian, because I think we probably covered
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
So maybe we can get some questions thrown at us.
All right, guys. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So getting used to this new platform. There are a lot of really awesome questions in the chat that I'm really excited about. And it looks like people are using the upvote ability on there. So one of the first questions we have is, how did you find a manufacturer to make a prototype? Did you have to go overseas or find a place in the US?
That was extremely difficult, at least how Joey did it, but that took us 2 years to find a manufacturer because it's a medical device, at least like CathWear. It's very personal, close to home type of product, and it needs to be made a specific way. So we were sending out prototypes that my stepmom making them at the kitchen table for 2 years straight. We would have to send one out to make the earth and then wait for them to come back 30 days, pass it around to the team. And okay, now we need to change this and send it back. So that took a really, but that's the journey. That's what it's about. I've been doing this for almost 10 years and I've yet to make a dollar of a profit for myself. I mean, the company's certainly growing. We just keep putting the money in. And that's something that we need to always keep, in the back of our minds, that it's a marathon.
Right. Yeah. And for myself and our company, it was difficult as well, finding a manufacturer. And so what we ended up doing is Tofik and I were big on, this has to be US made. It has to. I think that's drilled into us all the time. It's got to be made in the US for various reasons, right? We sought out manufacturers in the US, and I think it's because we were, two nurses with a random idea, could not get a single manufacturer US side to take us serious, or the costs were so astronomical, there's no way we could have done it. And so what we utilized actually is Alibaba. And I'm sure some of you have heard about it. If you haven't, it's basically a platform where you can search a manufacturer for anything you can ever imagine. Okay. And they'll find it.
Yeah, that's how we started too.
Right. Yeah. So there's different ways of doing it. And you just have to explore, but I'd start there. Type in whatever you're looking for on Alibaba and then go from there.
Awesome. That's great advice from both of you. Thank you. Cordero. Oh, hi, Cordero.
Hey, Cordero.
Yeah. We all know
Everybody knows him.
Doesn't know that guy.
He asked, how hard is it to get an idea into hospital systems?
Oh, impossible for me up to this point. It's very difficult because CathWear is not benefit care setting, but Joey has had a lot of success with that.
It's tough. I can tell you, Cordero, it's tough. You got to go because not every hospital runs the same. In one hospital, the CNO might make that call and it's good to go. CNO says yes, everyone else will say yes right behind it. So other hospitals, it's got to get checked off by infection prevention, financing, purchasing. And so really to answer that is really tough because every hospital is different. What I can say is a blanket statement, it's really time consuming and it's like a game of cat and mouse. But when you explore, that's in my opinion, it's all worth it at the end if you can get a hospital hop on board. And maybe we could talk a little bit more about that particular thing later, because there's just so much more to that question, and we could talk offline too. But yeah, it's tough.
Well, and the thing is too, I'll say this really quick before we move on, is hospitals, they don't care about what nurses care about. They don't care that the patient's going to have an improved quality of life. They don't care that we're making an impact and people are living better lives, whatever. The hospitals look at the profit margin and things like that. And that's the angle that you need to pitch it to them, because the people that sign off on that, most of the time, they're not the nurses. Even if I've had nurses say that they love CathWear and they think that there's a need for it. But once we get into the people who are supposed to open the door, it never gets anywhere. So
yeah, it's tough. Good question though, Cordero.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. Next question is from Ryan. He asked, how do you keep a good idea from being copied or stolen when seeking help with a patent and production process?
To be honest with you, anything can be knocked off. Like Louis Vuitton is knocked off and it's sold all over the internet. What you want to try to do is just focus on the US market, at least for me. Like somebody's in the UK is selling CathWear. And I remember the first time I found that out, it kind of hurt a little bit. And then my business partner said that to me. He said, Louis Vuitton gets knocked off. Consider yourself in good company. But the patent here in the US, If a company with billions and billions of dollars wanted to take CathWear, they could, because they'll bury you in legal fees. So you might ask, well, what's the point of a patent? Because it shows that you have IP. It's good for investors. It's good when you pitch it. It shows the sophistication of the company, and there is a level of protection to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, of course, companies can knock you off, right? Like, let's say Medline, you come up with some idea or device, and Medline sees it. If you've got it patented and they know that about you, it might be more of a headache to try and deal, although they likely will destroy you, like Brian said, in legal fees and whatnot. But it might be more of a headache to go that route. They might just approach you and say, look, we know you have a patent. Why don't you just let us buy it off you? And so you might position yourself down the road in a better position. One thing I will say is, don't let that keep you from moving forward. Obviously, start that patent process. And if you really are that concerned, start having people sign non-disclosure agreements. That will eventually protect you down the road. But that's how you got to start. But don't let that deter you from actually moving forward with your idea.
Okay, thank you. Great question. And I'm going to combine these two questions in one, and it'll be our last question of this Q&A section. David asked, did you have to pay the patent attorney first, or was there a mechanism where they allowed you to pay over time, and was it expensive?
Most patent attorneys, like all attorneys, they're going to want their money up front, because when you start the patent search is first. So you essentially are investing a down payment, like $400 or $500. I invented something else after CathWear. It's a surgical clip, and I did that one completely different. Invent Help was very expensive, but they let you go on a payment plan. They cover all of the costs within that payment plan. But the second medical device that I invented and then sold it, that one I just went and did it on my own, and I think it was like $2,300. But like $400 or $500 from that is non-refundable, which is the patent search.
Yep. I echo exactly what Brian said.
All right. Well, thank you both. I guess we'll move on to the next section.
Cool. All right. So the next section, so let's say you've identified the problem, you think you have a solution, you've kind of started working on prototyping, maybe finding manufacturers. What you're going to want to know is how to eventually fund this project. This is another hiccup for people, or oftentimes cause people to just stop in general. There's going to be a ton of different ways you can fund the project. For myself and Tofiki and SafeSeizure, we personally bootstrapped the whole thing. We used our personal savings. We both infused X amount into our company to get it running. From that point, we were using our monthly, weekly salaries that our wives weren't too fond of. But it's what we saw, light at the end of that tunnel, and felt like we could do it that way. That's not always the case. And so, that was just our situation. I don't know about Brian with you guys and.
Well, listen, don't ever not invent something because of money, right? Like, listen, nurses are over the almost 20 years, the most trusted profession. There's value in that. And when nurses invent stuff, if a plumber invents something, like, it's kind of like, well, what does it do? And who else invented it? When a nurse invents something, there's so much trust associated with the nursing profession, that when a nurse invents something, people automatically think that it works because of our oath to not do any harm. And everyone knows the bring. So people will invest. You'd be surprised at the people in your community, in your family, that may be able to invest. There are a lot of small business loans, especially now after COVID. You'd be crazy not to apply for a small business loan. There are a lot of accelerator programs. For me, I love to enter into tests, accelerator programs and things like that. And, I've won most of them, but, so you don't win them all, that's for sure. But we've gotten a lot of free money like that. And there's a lot of ways social media is free, and making posts and things like that, and connections. And one thing that I do want to talk about, be careful with angel investors. Me personally, I don't know if there's any angel investors here. If there are, forgive me. But I don't trust angel investors when dealing with, at least with nurses, because, or at least from my perspective, I don't have a business acumen. I am clinically inclined. So I had to hire somebody that was that had a business acumen in order to strengthen my weakness. And the things that I saw from the angel investors that we spoke, they know what they're talking about. So they'll come in and say, yeah, just give me 5% or 10%. But two things happen there. You don't know 5% of what? What if you have $1 trillion company and somebody gave you, some money when you had a startup and you gave 5%? That's a big piece, or if it's, it doesn't profit as much. And now you have, and the second part of that is now you have somebody involved in the project that they don't really know you. They don't know what you're doing, and that they're checking up on you. Have to answer to them, and that can really slow your motivation down versus building your own team with people that you're comfortable working with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the takeaway from this slide is that there's going to be different ways to get money, right, to fund your idea or your whatever you're working on. Again, bootstrap. That means just you and your partner or whoever coming out of your pocket to do it. Free money, like Brian said. Actually, something that really helped us is we won that 2020 ANA Innovation Award. Came with a cash award. Really gave us a boost and allowed us to do a ton more as far as inventory and other things.
Yeah.
And then just know that if you are going to bring on an investor or someone as far as that regard goes, likely you'll be giving away some sort of equity or percentage on sales or something along those lines. That's not
very true.
In the world, though, right, Brian? Like
because
right, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing, right?
No, it's one or the other. If you don't have money to pay somebody, you have to give them equity in your company. But when they become a partner. But you want to do that with somebody that you're comfortable working with. For example, for me, when I hired a childhood friend, he has his master's in business. He faints at the sight of blood. He hates everything associated with nursing. That's my guy, right? Because I faint at the sight of a business plan. Like, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So I built my team based on my weaknesses. We ended up hiring someone else, and we just gave out percentages here and there at a low rate. Someone to build our online presence and build us up on Amazon and stuff like that, because you have to. I don't have a way to pay them for an hourly wage.
Right. So now would be the part where you're going to start to wonder, okay, well, how can I even make money? And Brian and I, we've talked a lot about this particular slide, and that, what you really want to do is think about this initially, right? Because what you don't want to do is start out, you have this amazing idea, put every dollar you've ever made into it, and then not have at least an idea as to how you're going to make money back in the future. So a couple of different ways that you can make money, and Brian and I, again, for like the 1,000th time, have gone different directions with this in our own companies. So there's B2B, which is business to business. And then there's B2C, which is business to consumer. That's like direct sales. Someone buys it on Amazon, it goes straight to them, right? So for me and SafeSeizure and Frontier, we've already kind of touched on how difficult hospitals are to get into, but that is considered B2B. We're a business, we're selling to the hospital, which is the business. It's difficult, but it proves its value down the road, because if I sold to a hospital who we finally get in the door there, that hospital will likely serve me a contract for multiple years even. Example, like Kaiser Permanente, we just got them last year. But what that means is, like, it was a headache. It took us over a year and talking to a million different people to get into this particular facility or hospital network. But once we're in, they approved us on a national level. So any hospital, Kaiser, wherever you are, whether it's Texas, LA, doesn't matter, our product is now in their database, and anybody can go in and punch in our product code, and it gets sent off to your hospital. But that's the value if you can get over all those hurdles and roadblocks. And then what about you, Brian, with CathWear, like pros and cons? What have you seen?
For me, it was different, and we keep saying that it's different, and
I love it. I love that.
I know, because it's true. We want you to know that there's really no right way. Like, if someone else invented it, that's in the chat. By the way, there's a lot of good questions, and I hope you stick around for the end, because those are all valid questions. Like, you would have in a completely different way. So I'm not able to sell into hospitals like I would want to at the moment. So for me, it was more my B2B was to distributors like Henry Schein, working with Medline, working with Byram Healthcare, and those national distributors that sell leg bags. That's where our B2B is. But we have a big retail, an online presence for our retail sales, and that's why we're getting reviews, a 4.5-star rating on Amazon going on 2 years, and a 5-star rating on Google. within that same time frame. And we had to build that. We had to get our search engine optimization up and running. We had to build the website 3 times. Each time we had to start completely over, of people being able to find us and things like that. It's not easy. None of this is easy, right? Like, you'd be like, oh wow, well, Brian invented something and it's so cool, like he looks like he's so smart, or blah blah blah. But it's not, because it's 9 years of just trudging through whatever it takes, however, whatever it needs to be done, and whatever it takes. And with staying motivated, sometimes I miss something in my family, and sometimes I miss something at CathWear. I personally don't think it's possible to hold both equally. You're just kind of balancing it all based on priority, right? That's what nurses do. For me, hearing I answer all the customer service calls for CathWear, because I believe there's value when a patient calls our website and a nurse picks up the phone. I know that puts them at ease. And to have to do that and hear what the patients are saying, patients calling me crying, patients saying, I thank God for this invention, patients telling me, how great it's changed their lives. That's so motivating for me that there's no dollar amount that can satisfy that. Now, my business partners, they don't care about those calls. They just care about the bottom dollar, and that's fine. But I still find motivation in that. I find motivation in doing these types of platforms and teaching what my pitfalls, my highs and lows, in order to help other people. Joey, what are some things that you use for motivation?
Yeah, honestly, so similar to how you get those calls with your patients, like, to me, the number one thing is when we go do an in-service. Tofik and I still do every in-service, regardless of where it is in the country. We're going to go.
Yep.
We've been doing digital in-services now, but prior to this, it didn't matter where it was. We want to be the ones to show you the product. And to me, there is no better feeling than when him and I pull those SafeSeizure pads out, and the nurses are like, "Oh my God, why didn't I think of that?"
Yeah,
there's no better feeling, like, oh, where was this 30 years ago? And so it's validation. And I think that's a deep down, I mean, that's an ego thing. That's almost borderline selfish. But to be honest, you have to figure out what your why is and what keeps you motivated. And for me, it's like Brian said, it's not the check, it's not the money. We haven't seen it yet, but this is still so fun to be able to come out here, tell our story, talk about what we're doing. And the idea that I or Brian can even potentially spark one of you to go file a patent or start that, I'm telling you, is all I personally probably would ever need from this. I'm just glad that there's other folks doing it. That's the other big thing is Brian and I we connected on LinkedIn, I think, had a phone call within a couple of days, and it was just like, holy, there's another person doing this exact same thing with the same passion. And that in itself is crazy motivating.
It is. And you know what, Joey, when you said like that's, why didn't somebody invent this 30 years ago? Somebody said something to me about CathWear, and it was very humbling. Somebody else has invented CathWear before. It's just they just quit, right? And somebody else has invented SafeSeizure before or thought of it. They just quit. Most people quit either because you want the big bucks early, you're not going to get it, or you can't manage the family time and the business time, which it's difficult. Sometimes people have different circumstances, but we can't quit. We can't quit. As nurses, we're obligated to go forward, to lay that brick down, advanced healthcare within your time here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Brian. And I think that's honestly there's a million other reasons, I'm sure, for each of us to keep us motivated. That one really stands out to me. It's funny, there's like this picture of this mountain here, but if you look real close, like me and Brian are just over the Trusted logo down. Like we just started this journey, and there's so much more to go. And so it's really important that you do figure out ways to stay motivated along this journey, because it's a long road, and who knows what's going to be at the top, or if there is a top. You just keep going and enjoy the ride. And so you got to know your whys, and you got to stay motivated and have something to push you. Like Brian said, dollar's not going to work. Just like nursing, right? Just like nursing,
it's all about the patient.
The people that went into nursing for the money, because they're the ones like either running around stressed out. They're the ones complaining most of the shift. The people that enjoy nursing and love talking to a patient,
That's good.
they're
That's
the ones
good.
that are just like, I didn't do this for the money. There's something else here to it. It's just like nursing. Just enjoy the process, enjoy the ride. So I think with that, Brian, if you're comfortable, I think maybe we should take on some more questions because I know we wanted to dedicate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to it.
All right, your Vanna White is back. It's a cheesy joke, I know. Thanks for the pity laugh there, Brian. All right, Nicole asked.
I got your back. I got your back.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Nicole asked, Brian, how did you get your product accepted by Medicare?
Every state is different what the guidelines are. You can just contact Medicare in your state and they'll tell you how to do that. Somebody else asked, is it FDA approved? And those go together, so I'm just going to cheat ahead. CathWear is FDA registered, and we had to be FDA registered in order to get the HCPCS code. And then we have to pay a fee every year to maintain our federal, the FDA registration in order to keep that. So they kind of go hand in hand. But again, to answer your question directly, Google, every state is different. So Google how to contact Medicare and just call them up. You'd be surprised at how much information you get when you literally just call the customer service of anything that you're going to do. When I want to get in contact with the hospital or with the distributor, I just call customer service. I say, hi, my name's Brian. I'm a registered nurse. That's first. Once you do that, you put people at ease, and then you start asking for stuff and people just start transferring you. You may have to make 10 calls.
Brian, I personally was extremely surprised at the level of customer service for the USPTO. I was surprised. You actually will get to talk to someone on the phone and they're going to tell you, here's this and that and this. Same with at least in California, when you go to file your quarterly taxes, you would think it's a government thing. I'm going to get an answering machine. No one's going to talk, or when they do, they're going to be rude and quick. And no, I'm telling you, just like Brian said, call them. First, obviously go on the website, and a lot of them have, it may be a lot of steps, but they're going to have it spelled out. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down. There might be 30 steps, but at least it's there.
And you just do one at a, that's all you can do is one at a time. And that's a policy that we have at CathWear. We just do the next. For me personally, I don't like anybody waiting on CathWear. Like if you and I are exchanging emails because you're a urology nurse and we're going to start outfitting your patients with CathWear and you ask me for something, I try to have a fast turnaround time. I rather that CathWear is waiting on the lead than the lead to be waiting on CathWear. And that's just a mind game that I use to make sure that I'm staying active in the process.
Right. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So Larissa asked, and this was upvoted a couple of times, I have an invention idea. Do I need to have an actual prototype to get started?
I believe you do.
Okay, so I'm a little.
Well, no. I take that back. Go ahead, Joey. I don't think you need one to actually get started. I think it makes it high.
I was going to say, to get started, absolutely not. There's a ton of. I've seen investors invest in big dollar amounts to people with no physical, tangible item, but you do have to go through the steps as if it's a full-blown prototype. If you can show on paper, look, if I make this, I don't know, digital smart necklace, for example, you don't have to actually go through the whole process of having it work. But what you do need to do is show this is how you get it manufactured. This is how it would work from a electronical standpoint or whatever it is, what needs to go into it. And that's why it'll work when it's completed. I need money to get there or whatever it is. Yeah. That's
good. You don't, to say it in a different way, you don't need to have a working prototype.
Correct.
Right. And I believe, especially like with my surgical clip that I invented after CathWear, I built it and I sent it to them with all the surgical wires and blah, blah, blah. Because think about it, when you're telling somebody, hey, I have this great idea and here, you build it. It doesn't have as much value as you say, CathWear, the first one, I went to Walmart and bought men's underwear, that was longer down the thigh, went to the arts and crafts store, and then started to put it together at my stepmom's kitchen table. You just want to show that it's possible.
Right.
And then it gives them more value because they can physically see it. So to answer your question directly, I don't think you need a prototype to start. I think if you can build a prototype, I think it gives it a higher probability to succeed.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Now remind me, Joey and Brian, do you have another section after this?
No, or it's just our contact info. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'll put that up actually, since we're already going here, in case anyone wants to jot these down or whatever. So we can continue with the Q&A though.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure I wasn't gonna to go into a hole there at the end. Okay, perfect. So David asked, this is also related to prototypes. While in the design process, did you contact a design engineer to help design?
I personally, we didn't. I can tell you real quick because ours is so simple. I did most of all the designing on my computer. I dabble in a little bit of 3D design as well. And so I was able to mock up some things with dimensions and those sorts of things. But again, you don't have to. I don't think you have to go that route. But Brian?
We did. We ended up partnering up with a lady that helped start Under Armour, and it was more educational, which is what you need at that stage. And she was just talking to us about apparel. She did help us with designs, and then I hate to say it but it's true. We just weren't listening to what she was saying because we kept trying to listen, but then, make our own meal with what she was saying. And, but at the end of the day, it was very helpful. The things that she told us about always ordering a medium when we got a sample back, and not ordering a large from somebody else and a small from somebody else, and things like that. So to answer your question directly, yes, you could contact the designer, but remember, everything.
Yes, and to that too, though, depending on what you're making, right? If you're doing something that has mechanical features, and of course, if that's not in your wheelhouse, yeah, don't be afraid to seek out people with experience or expertise outside of your own. Yeah,
you have to.
So fun having both of your perspectives and experience with us. It makes it way more well-rounded. Yeah, it's been fun to kind of listen to both sides.
Yeah, well, when we were preparing this, we realized, like, oh my God, I didn't do that. Oh, I didn't do that. So we knew that we were going to be able to give the listeners a lot of value, because Joey, it's about 80% of the way that he went about is completely different.
Makes you realize there's a lot of different ways to get there.
Yes,
then asked, how long did it take for both of you to get from the initial concept to a point of profitability or meaningful sales?
For me, it was about 4 years. We formed the company in 2016, and we didn't start making a profit until like late 19 or early 20.
Yeah, and for us, it was about 2 years. We formed the company in 2017, end of 2017. I think our first purchase order came in end of 2019, end of 2018. So I guess a year. So I know that sounds quick, but trust me, that's a long process. So it felt like 2 years, but I think it was actually a year from actually prototype to being able to put it on a bed rail for our first purchase order.
Yeah. Now, Ben, and I mean this in every respectful way, of course, those things will hinder your ability to start. When you say, okay, I'm going to start this, but like, I've been doing this for 9 years. If somebody would have told me 9 years ago, when I had the vision for CathWear in the operating room, that it'd be 2021 and I wouldn't be a multimillionaire, I would have been like, no way, because that's what we think. Like, we think that patent equals million, and it's not. It's not as easy as that. So when you start looking, like, using your question as a backdrop, well, how long did it take for you to make a profit? You're gonna run out of steam, because then the profit becomes the goal instead of solving the problem. When you pursue the passion, when you use your passion to solve a problem, the possibilities are endless. When you use passion to chase money, that's all you're probably going to get is money, and that's not very satisfying nowadays.
Thank you for that. Ben also asked, this is a great question. I'm sure this would be beneficial to everyone in the group. Are there any support groups or startup support entities that offer support for nurse inventors specifically?
There's a lot coming up now, actually. So again, this whole nurse entrepreneur thing is really building up some steam. It's becoming a real thing. So if you're on, I'm personally mostly almost 100% on LinkedIn if I'm on any social media, but there's a huge community there for nurse entrepreneurs, nurse inventors, nurse innovators.
Sanciel
is one. I mean, they run like whole hackathons to kind of get nurses moving towards the one solution. You have Nurse Innovation Hub. So there's a couple different groups that are being started to help support nurses, because we have no place to go, at least not right now. There's not a clear direction, but regardless, hop on. And when those platforms do start sort of filling out, they'll be there waiting for you with open arms. And they already are. It's just who's going to be the leader there. It's hard to say, but there's plenty of support.
Those platforms validate how we started this talk, that nurse entrepreneurs, nurse innovators, nurse inventors, it's truly on the rise. And this is the time to jump in the wave of that invention process. Like for me, that's why I wrote that book, Let It Flow, because in 2020, it said, you know, the year of the nurse or whatever. And then we got our teeth kicked in with COVID. But like I just said to myself, like, I want to capitalize on that. There's something going on where everyone's looking at nurses. I just said, let me just write the book. And it's not, you know, it's a lot of poor decisions that I made that are written in the book that I don't want somebody else to do, because I'm always saying to myself, I'm like, man, like, do other nurses know this? Like, do other nurses know that people don't care about patient care but nurses? And I really struggled with that. I struggled with the emotional connection to the business, and I needed to be well-rounded and be more realistic, right? Just because a patient likes it and they bought one, that doesn't keep the lights on. We need to sell obviously more than one. And there weren't any support groups. For me, I had no idea. I thought LinkedIn was a platform for people to look for work. I really wasn't big on social media until a couple of years ago. And when I got on LinkedIn, I actually got on there pursuing a lead from another company. So I ended up setting up my profile and all this stuff so that when I found this person, it would be presentable. But what I found was just a whole new world of nurse inventors. I thought I was the only one, which made me a big fish in a little pond. And that's the worst way to live, right? You always want to be a little fish in a big pond. I started seeing nurses with all these crazy degrees and job titles and all these inventions. And then that let me know that I had entered into the room where I knew that I was going to be able to grow by accessing people, by engaging people. It may not even be a group. It may be one-on-one.
That's awesome. And just from my perspective, you know, working at Trusted Health, you can kind of see there's so many nurse entrepreneurs and so many people doing so many wonderful things within our field. And so I can definitely vouch for that. But LinkedIn is a great place to be.
Yep.
Oh, forget it.
Let's see. There's a lot of questions in here about how you funded it. I think these were asked prior to that section, but do you have anything to expand upon that, like how you individually each kind of were able to fund your whole process?
Yeah, there's a question that I keep staring at it here by David Hill. Says, did you guys ever consider contacting venture capitalists? When I hear venture capitalists, I just hear in the back of my head, run! Because I believe that you can do it depending on what the invention is, depending on how you want to go about your invention. I believe that there are other ways to go about it where you can gain free money, free momentum, a free motivation before you start with them. Those people, they care nothing about your mission. They're just looking to make a quick buck. And I know that that's, you know, generalizing everybody, and it's horrible to make an absolute like that. But my concern is making sure that nurses are protected and realize that, you know, they come in and they take a big bite of your company, and then they have the rights to call the shots. Me personally, I wanted me and the team to be able to do things the way that we wanted without having to consult with somebody because they gave us, you know, 100 grand or whatever, when there's a lot of things in the community. There's accelerator programs, there's invention contests, there's small business loans, there's people that you know that probably have money in the bank that you don't even know that they have money in the bank because they don't have anywhere to invest it. They don't have a nurse to tell them that, hey, I have an idea.
You know, it's always going to be different. Again, like I didn't take any venture funds as well. But that's because my partner and I, we decided we don't want to give away any equity. We had conversations with investors. We had investors approach us and say, hey, we like what you're doing. Can we invest? And for us, we want to keep it private. When you're private, you make all the decisions like Brian said. You don't have to cut anyone a check. And so, because also, like Brian said, if we're not cutting ourselves a check, it's probably really hard to cut them a check. They're not doing anything. They're still getting $1.
That's good.
And I'm not getting anything. So, but again, it all depends on what you're doing and how to get your idea to move forward. And so, you know, 25% of a half of, don't worry about my fractions and math, but the idea is that 25% of a whole pie is a lot more than, you know, 100% of a slice of pie. So that might be the direction you need to go. It just really just depends. And like Brian said too, we're nurses, so unless you got your business cap on and your percentage is not, you got to be careful because they will, you know, chew you up and spit you out.
They're very aggressive, and that's why that's why they have all the dough, right? But at the same time, like for me, even though my business partners, none of them are nurses, me being the CEO, I make them understand patient care. Like I'll put my foot down if we're not doing enough for patients. Like I never cower to anything that is going to benefit a patient. You know, with pitching CathWear, like I don't want anyone else to pitch it, not because they can't, but because I am going to speak to the patient's plight. And when you bring on venture capitalists and stuff like that, they don't care about that. And because they gave you 100 grand or whatever, they don't have to care.
Brian, if we brought on a third person on this conversation, they might say, you guys are crazy for not taking investment. Why are you using your own money? So, you know, it just really depends on how you want to go about it. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. So,
and one thing too that I want to add to that, you could also invent something and license it. I met this nurse on LinkedIn, and I've met quite a few, and it's sad. But I met this one nurse in particular, and she called me. She said, I have this idea, and you know, what should I do? License it or open the business? I actually tried to license CathWear, but nobody wanted to manufacture underwear and get into all of that. So what we were told was, create the brand, build it, show that there's a market for it, and then sell it at some point. But for my surgical clip that I invented, you know, for that, I ended up licensing it. So because I'm not going to get it sterilized with ethylene oxide and get it into the operating room deep within a hospital setting. So I explained that to this nurse, and I said, maybe you should think about licensing it. And this is the wrong way to go about it. This is not about the patient. And she said, well, I'm not gonna license it and have somebody else make millions off of my idea. I said, well, how much is the man, I'm even getting a little choked up because that's just the wrong way to go about it, you know? And I said, well, how much are you making now? And she said, well, nothing. And I said, you'd rather make nothing than to make something where you're getting maybe 2 large paychecks a year and you can go on a couple of vacations with your family. And I said, and better, you're going to help these patients than license it. And she said, no, if I'm not going to make more money than the person that's going to license it, I'd rather just not invent it. And I tried to get her to understand that there were patients that needed that medical device that she has. I didn't even know what it was, but it's a nurse with a medical device. That means there's a need to be filled. And she just said she'd rather not invent it. That really broke my heart. And what really makes it worse is I've met almost a dozen nurses on LinkedIn that have said the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Well, we only have a minute left, so I'm gonna address one thing. Susan just asked where she can watch this back. We're gonna send out the recording of this event to everyone who RSVP'd, and so you'll be able to see that YouTube recording after the event. So don't worry if you're having technical difficulties. And then I think there's one in the chat that the last question I want to ask are either you open or available to mentor new inventors or have any other resources for them?
Yeah, I am. I love helping people.
I myself as well. Reach out to me. That's actually on my to-do list this year is to be more open. I had a struggle with mentoring, like, should I be mentoring if I don't know all the answers? But my LinkedIn community quickly spit it back, like, look, man, you don't have to have every answer to mentor. So I am more than happy to mentor where I'm at in my career, in my journey, if I can, again, inspire others to get moving. So reach out.
Awesome.
Awesome. Was there anything that you both wanted to add before we wrapped up this evening?
I just want to say thank you.
No, you can feel free to reach me on LinkedIn,
Yep.
and we'll take it.
Yep. And thank you, Trusted. Thank you for everyone that tuned in.
Yes.
Man, it's awesome.
Well, we really, really enjoyed it. I know Nicole has a few closing words, but thank you both so much. I really, personally, as a nurse, this was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Casey.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Brian and Joey, thank you again. I'll just continue the thank you train. And to all of you who joined us tonight, we really appreciate you hopping in, asking great questions. And like, this is your first step, right? The first step is to gather this information and then figure out what's step two. It's a big leap. And so we're proud of you and thank you for joining us. And just a reminder too, you will get an email after this event concludes in about 20 minutes or so asking for feedback. This feedback is absolutely critical as we build out our events platform. We have so many events in the pipeline, especially for Nurses Week, which is just less than a month away. So we can't wait to share them with you. And so make sure you're signed up for all the things so we can get you on the RSVP list nice and early. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight and we'll see you soon. Good night, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.